Pick a move in the ring. You can hit me with the words you fling.
Welcome everybody. We're back with post fight, and today I'm joined by an old post fight podcast head, Chris Edwards Bailey. He's back on the show now. He's bought himself a new microphone. Chris, how is that new hardware treating you?
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic, and it's so overwhelming. The price that I got it much cheaper than you did.
Yeah, Chris got it for $500 off the price that I bought it for about a month or 6 weeks ago. I'm very upset about that. But good to know
I'm over the moon.
Yeah, but it's good to have Chris back. And yes, today we are going to talk. I think there's only one place really to start, and that is Jon Jones having a little bit of beef with Dana White. Yeah, Chris, I'm sure you've read Jon's tweets. I'll bring them up on screen here. But yeah, what do you make of this? Chris, Dana White told Brett Okamoto that Jon Jones was asking for, I quote, an absurd amount of money. Do you think it's absurd to ask for a pay increase? I don't know the official figure, but to go up to heavyweight and make your debut there against Francis Ngannou, no less.
I think it would be a very big draw, but I don't actually think Jon Jones has never ever proven himself to be a big draw like a Conor McGregor or a Ronda Rousey or even a Brock Lesnar style draw. So it's really hard to judge. The thing is, it's better when you have all the chips. But the thing is, right now, people wouldn't mind if Jon Jones didn't fight for a year because he's got no actual direct competitor. There's no real number one contender. So I think if he's asking for too much, and especially at this time, the UFC can use the whole coronavirus to pretty much say, hey, we aren't getting any attendance at the moment. So it really puts the onus on fighter pay. I mean, really, when this virus struck and they were flying people to Jacksonville, if there was ever a chance for fighters to unionize or go on strike, this was actually probably it, because I feel like they actually had a strong hand for a change. But with so many fighters willing to fight and fly across the country with the virus, it doesn't really help them. I'd like to see them make more money. I'd like to see all the fighters make more money. I think the UFC pays about 18% of its revenue to the fighters, which if you compare to the NFL and the NBA, I think it's close to about 50%. So obviously the UFC is very profitable, but the fighters aren't getting the pay. So it goes both ways. I think Francis seems very up to fight. What do you think, Nick?
Well, I don't know if you could see that there on the screen. I just brought up one of the tweets and one of the replies from Cyborg saying, "Know your worth, champ." That is something, isn't it? As you were alluding to, Jon Jones is the greatest of all time, or he's in the top three. He's in the conversation always. You can't talk about pound for pound number one or GOAT rankings without talking about Jon Jones. Dana White even said the same in that interview. He said, as much as that, Jon Jones is the best. And he said, imagine how good Jon Jones would be if he wasn't doing Jon Jones things his whole career, which is another point. But if you're going to give that accolade to someone, you got to pay him, I think. And I think Jon Jones is absolutely right to ask for more money. He's a big draw for UFC. He's probably third only behind Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov when it comes to pay-per-view buys.
Yeah,
he's consistently will go above 800,000, or he might even top 1 million for a big fight like a DC, especially the last fight he did with DC. I think it did over 1 million. I think Jones is right to ask for his money. Let's have a little look at what he's saying here. If you're not going to change my contract for the heavyweight move, at least have the decency to be honest with the fans. I was over the situation, but I'm not going to sit back and allow Dana to lie to the fans. I never asked for an absurd amount of money. That's BS. Absolute BS. Not going to repeat the swear words. And then he woke up again this morning. That was last night. Woke up, just had continued his run. So I'm not going to give up any hope. The way I'm taking this whole thing is the UFC don't want to budget the Jon Jones heavyweight move up right now. They should have just said that. Lying on me and saying I asked for too much is just unfair. That was unnecessary. And then they had a couple more. Yeah, you get the gist. Yeah. He seems to be saying, I'm not mad, but
I think it is a big fight. I wouldn't say it is a mega fight, but the thing is, he is kind of playing a very good hand right now because France just come off a win. They're both off wins, if you call Jon Jones a win, but it's fresh in the mind, and I think it would actually probably be the biggest fight of the year if it was made now, the biggest fight so far, actually. Probably not involve a Conor McGregor, but it would be the biggest fight.
Absolutely. I think a lot of fans are interested in it. And I'm surprised because I thought the UFC would be desperate for a fight of that caliber, especially, as you said, in this time when they're not doing live gates. So you need to bring in the pay-per-view buys.
Yep.
I couldn't think of many other fights they could make that would bring in more.
No, well, also, I think the thing is, I think really, if you're moving up as a champion, you should really be moving up to fight the champion. It's very rare you see a champion go up to fight a number one or a number two contender, as Francis is. He hasn't even got an interim belt. So that kind of plays into the UFC's hands there. And there is a bit of history of Jon Jones not really wanting that Stipe heat. I think he sees some flaw in Francis's game, and I think he thinks he can keep him away with the distance and leg kicks. I don't know. If he really wants the big money would be to fight Stipe for the belt, personally. I think the UFC would offer more for that, for a champion versus champion.
Well, yeah, I think Dana White alluded to that. Let's see what he said here in the article, which I wrote up for a CMP, of course.
My favorite journalist.
Of course. It's the one thing, if you come out and say, yeah, listen, I want a little more money. This is what Dana told Brett Okamoto of ESPN. The amount of money Jon Jones wanted doesn't make sense. First of all, you have in the light heavyweight division, the Dominic Reyes fight as the fight that makes sense. So is Jon Jones going to go and fight Francis Ngannou, then try to take a run at the heavyweight title? I don't believe that. He's never wanted to move to heavyweight before. For the amount of money he's asking for, it's not going to happen. You couldn't be asking for a more absurd amount of money at a worse time. So clearly, Dana White thinks it's a smokescreen or something. Jones just trying to get more money, doesn't really want to take heavyweight move seriously.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Dana White can go on about with the no attendance, but I think if you look at the Endeavor deal, I think it worked out to only about 12% of their money came from attendance, which is a sizable chunk. But I would assume every well-run business would be able to survive a 12% drop in revenue over a protracted amount of time, because that is just generally how business goes and how business cycles work. So maybe it's poor budgeting on their point, or they're working on a very, very small margin, which I don't think they are. I'd love to see the fight. I think it'd be a fantastic fight. It'd get everyone excited, everyone talking. I mean, out there, over all combat sports right now, it is Francis Ngannou and Deontay Wilder who are the biggest hitters that we've seen in any combat sport since Mike Tyson.
Well, we'll see how it plays out, as Dana White loves to say. I think, another story I wanted to bring up on the show today. Conor McGregor, Kamaru Usman, obviously, or seemingly offered him a title shot for the welterweight belt. Dana White doesn't like the idea. Look at this. Dana White shuts down Conor McGregor fighting Kamaru Usman. He needs to see what plays out at 155 pounds. Yeah, Dana was telling ESPN that he thinks Masvidal, Colby Covington, and Leon Edwards, they're the three guys in line for a shot at Usman next, not McGregor. What do you make of it?
I do agree that they're all probably ahead of him. I mean, Masvidal has all the cards because he's actually a bigger pay-per-view draw than Usman himself. I mean, I believe last year he made the most pay-per-view buys, Masvidal, and obviously was on an absolute tear, knocking out Ben Askren, the Diaz fight, etc., winning the BMF belt. And he has become a huge star, not only in the UFC, but in Latin America particularly. And just generally, he's become far more mainstream than he ever was. We all love a little bit of street Jesus. And the Colby fight, for me, is the one I'm more unsure about, because I feel like Colby probably needs a win before fighting Usman. Ideally, as a Brit, I'd love to see Leon Edwards fight Usman. And I'd like to see... I think Masvidal is going to take the Diaz fight. I think that's a done deal. I think Masvidal right now is thinking, cash the check. He'll do a bigger pay-per-view than Usman's title defense. And then when he fights for the title, he can upgrade that to another level, the payout he will get for that championship fight. I think Conor McGregor should play out at 155. I actually think Usman's just far too big for him.
Well, there's a quote here about the BMF situation. Dana White says, I'd rather see a UFC title be defended than the BMF title. So maybe he's not interested in Masvidal v Diaz.
Yeah, but if they're trying to make money right now, and they're saying they can't do the attendances. You can't. That's going to be a huge fight. All title fights will be huge, but that BMF, if you look back on it with The Rock, even with the boxing with Canelo Alvarez, stopping to show the BMF title fight in the arena, it does really show you the popularity of Masvidal and Diaz. And if they're looking for money, that is a money fight. It's the biggest money fight in the sport that doesn't have a title.
We'll see how everything plays out there with Conor McGregor. What about, we've got Tyron Woodley back, haven't we, this weekend, fighting Gilbert Burns. Yeah, let's get your quick take on the card this weekend.
Oh, I think it's an absolutely fantastic card. I think there's all the way up and down. I mean, you've got Mackenzie Dern coming off a first loss. That will be a really interesting fight. Obviously, the main event, Tyron Woodley, Gilbert Burns. I love Tyron Woodley. I think he's one of the best to do it, but I think he's 37, 38 now. He is getting on. I think Gilbert Burns is going to beat him, actually. And apparently, this weekend, because it's in the Apex Center, it is not a 30-foot cage or a 30-foot octagon. It's a 25-foot. And I actually think 25-foot is going to massively, massively favor Gilbert Burns with his absolutely world-class jiu-jitsu. But, you know, he surprised me many times, Tyron Woodley. If he can control the distance and connect with that right, he can put anyone out. And I think the co-main is Sakai versus Beligi Ivanov.
That's right. Let's have a look there. Blagoy Ivanov.
Blagoy Ivanov. And that, to anyone out there, they're not the biggest names, but I'll tell you what, at that weight class, at heavyweight, Ivanov is the scariest heavyweight. I don't care what you say about Francis Ngannou, Stipe Miocic, Daniel Cormier. If I met them in an alley, I think they would not kill me. But Ivanov, he survived the stabbing. He's got a scar on his chest. He just seems like a angry, mysterious man. And I think he's going to do some real damage.
Well, just back on Woodley. He said some interesting things at the virtual media day last night for us here in Hong Kong, but I'll have a little look. I think the takeaway was, yes, talking about going into a state of depression following the Kamaru Usman loss. Some really revealing stuff. He says, you know, I went into a state of depression for a while. I really wasn't talking to a lot of people. I was eating terrible. I wasn't training. Yeah, this is a big moment for Woodley, isn't it? It's been a while. He hasn't fought for over a year. He is a bit older, as you say. Could we see him walk away if things don't go right this weekend?
I think there is a chance we see him walk away. I think it all depends on how the fight goes. I think if he fights and he loses and it's very close, but I think if he loses any sort of devastating fashion, or if he just fails to show up like he did in the Usman fight, then I could see him walk away from the sport. I mean, he still does have a potential money fight with Colby if he does get through it, because they do have a massive animosity. And there is even the potential for a trilogy with Wonderboy, despite them being boring fights. I think you could easily see that headline Fight Night, so that's a possibility. But yeah, I do feel like he is a little bit on the way down.
Well, we'll have to leave it there because I've got to keep it quick today. I've got to go do another interview. But yeah, Chris, a pleasure to have you back. And I'm sure hopefully we'll have you on Sunday to recap the Tyron Woodley Gilbert Burns fight and all of that card. Yeah, thanks again for joining us. And hopefully we'll get Jon back, get the gang all reunited.
Yeah, an absolute pleasure, guys. I can't wait. I've been frothing at the mouth for this. Yeah,
and you see there, Chris has got a new little Twitter handle. He set up a new account, so go and follow him. Where can we find you, Chris?
At Chris EB_MMA on Twitter. I've just set it up in the last few days, so there's only about 5 tweets up there right now because I'm trying to move all my follow list over there, and then the Instagram will be up later today, and you'll actually be able to see a video of me doing some jiu-jitsu and rolling up there. So feel free to critique me, guys.
All right. I look forward to seeing it. Yeah, thanks again, Chris. And thanks for watching. We'll see you all again after a while.
Thank you very much.